So the next definition is bullet resistant, and in my career I've sold, maybe I've done 3 jobs. 1 or 2 openings in Chicago. It was a very high crime area. It was a soup kitchen is what it was, and they wanted a bullet resistant door or 2 doors. It may have been 2. There was also a job that I supplied bullet resistance for at a currency exchange in Milwaukee, and then there was a fella in Texas who was building a safe room and needed a frame and already owned all of the ballistic material that he would line the walls with. And the door was quite custom. It was basically a bookcase, but looks could be deceiving. It turns out that it was heavily fortified with ballistic resistant building material. What the client needed from me was an adjustable jam depth or throat frame so that he could pack ballistic resistant material into the throat or into the backside of the frame. So every single time that I've worked on bullet resistant, which isn't much, it's always been, what are you protecting against? And that literally tells or dictates the path in which you go when it comes to coming up with the right material. And it just turns out the path to do it in 1995 is the same path to do it in 2023. What threat are you guarding against? And therefore that's what you have to use. So I have done as reasonably deep of a dive as I can into the definition. I've spoken to a couple of industry experts about this, and I'm going to share with you what I came up with. So let's switch to the screen view and move on. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, so here's our next definition. Bullet resistant. A hollow metal assembly designed and manufactured to resist penetration by firearms projectiles. So a 1-sentence definition. Fairly broad and non-specific, and that's what I found to be the definition. Broad and non-specific, and it's an easy path that you get into immediately. So what I want to do now is take a look at the resources that I've pulled together, and we will touch on it. Then we'll switch over to a couple of conversations that we've had. And where I'm going to start is with some tabs that we have. Okay, so the first resource that I came up with is literally an article that was in the November 2016 of the DHI magazine, Doors and Hardware, and written by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Wearer, Managing Director of SDI, the Steel Door Institute. Okay, that's great. We're getting a definition right from the people that we're defining the definitions for. That's awesome. So there's not much here. Bullet-resistant assemblies. Bullet-resistant assemblies are typically installed in government buildings, cashier stands, high crime rate areas, and any structure where increased safety is desired. Nowadays, 2023, 2020, 2015 is really different than 1923, 1920, 1915 when it comes to gun violence in public. So bullet-resistant assemblies, unfortunately, are likely a growing segment of the hollow metal industry. A security consultant should analyze the building conditions to determine the proper bullet resistance level required. A security consultant, not a door distributor without training. Whoever commissions the project will likely determine what standards should be specified, but UL 752 is the most common test method. UL 752 is a standard published by Underwriters Laboratory. I'm not able to trot that out because I don't own UL 752. It's something that you have to purchase. Like all standards, you have to purchase them. So on the UL site, UL 752 is, I'm not sure why the range, but it's exceptionally expensive. Understandably so, the amount of research that goes into it. And I've never been in a class that referenced UL 752, so I don't have a copy of it that I can literally look at. So you can buy UL 752, and if you are dealing in bullet resistance, it may make good common sense for you to have it, or at least consult one. It assigns a level from 1 through 10, with 10 being the highest level of resistance to gunfire. Steel doors are generally available up to level 8. What that means is past that, And you'll hear in a upcoming conversation, you're dealing with specialty companies that are manufacturing stuff that is just not hollow metal. A variety of cores can be bullet resistant, such as steel stiffened, honeycomb, and polystyrene. Therefore, it is only necessary to specify a UL 752 level and not a specific core material. They're keeping it really easy for us. What threat are you attempting to guard against? And let the manufacturer worry about the rest in terms of core material, particularly at higher levels, as many of the cores are proprietary. Yeah, that makes sense. So here is just a list of the UL 752 classifications that I found online. And this is literally how I've done it in the past. What level bullet resistant do you need? I know I've done level 3. I think the gentleman in Texas was trying to hit level 8, believe it or not. And the thickness of his ballistic material was like 1.5 inches thick. It was incredibly thick material that he lined his walls with. I don't know, I can't explain the threat, but anyway, it may have been 8. In the currency exchange, it was 3. It was down here as far as I recall. So what's nice about this is type of weapon, handgun. Number of shots, 3. A test range, 4.6 meters away. Okay, great. And I don't know a lot about handguns, but I know that a .44 Magnum caliber is greater than a 9mm. If you put a caliper on the ammunition, you're going to get a value of its size, and that's a reference to it, as far as I know. And then you continue up with the type of tool creating the projectile, okay, to give you the level of threat that you're going against, or that you're protecting against. Okay. Level 1 through 10, and then beyond that. Ammunition legend here, I didn't really bother to read that. I don't know enough about ammunition to define that, but that's not for this video. So there is the chart. So someone's going to say, we need a level 6 protection. You as the distributor, you're going to go to your manufacturer and say, yep, here's the size, and I need a level 6. Let's listen to a couple of conversations. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Architectural Builders Supply is pleased to present you with this recording.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
Well, happy Monday. So, would you please educate me just at an introductory level when it comes to bullet resistance? I've done a couple of projects in my career, but not enough to speak reasonably intelligently on this. And I find it's either as a typical hollow metal distributor, if there's bullet resistance, it usually doesn't fall into my purview. It does when it's someone who wants one for their own strong room kind of thing. And that's really what I'm looking to talk about.
Yeah. What's your email address? Let me send you a couple things, and then we'll look at the same thing.
Yeah, sure.
You should have a couple of PDFs coming on an email here.
Okay.
Shortly.
Yeah, I see something coming through here. Yeah. I'm looking at the document that's published on the site, so that I've got.
Okay. The first thing you're going to need to know, D7 covers levels 1 through 3 bullet resistance. D8 covers levels 4 through 8. So the first thing you're going to need to know from the architect or whoever is what level of bullet resistance they need. And for instance, if you'll look at PDF D7 that I sent, he may not know the level of bullet resistance, but then you can show him the chart on the first page in the bottom right-hand corner. Level 1 covers a 9mm. Level 2 covers 357. Level 3 is a 44 mag. So, those are pistols. Those are not rifles. If he's looking for rifles and all that stuff, then, you're going to move up a few notches there. So, it may depend on what kind of building it is, and the main thing is what level of bullet resistance he's looking for. Right.
So what are the typical applications for this in the commercial world?
Sometimes you look at, like, detention centers. You may be looking at some type of so-called safe room in a residential application. It's just it varies.
Yeah.
But police stations, usually have a bullet resistant door somewhere.
What can you tell me about the core of the door in the sense of what gives it? I mean, is it carbon fiber? What would give it the ability to resist?
The core, as you can see on that first page of D7, on the upper left-hand side, it can be polystyrene, steel stiffened, or honeycomb, either one.
Right.
The core is not really what provides the bullet resistance. It's the thickness of the steel.
Oh.
And the steel thickness for these doors and frames both are 12 gauge.
My goodness.
So they're pretty heavy. Pretty heavy. Of course,
a lot of chutzpah.
That and that's level 1 through 3. Now you start getting into level 4 through 8, they may be 12 gauge and then have some, other steel liners on the inside of the door. They may have, depending on what level it is, they may have a 10 gauge liner plate on the inside of a 12 gauge. You don't.
My goodness.
It just depends on what it is.
Yeah, right on. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Where we are, sometimes it would be true to say there's more money than common sense. Can you give any advice as to how we would determine the real or imagined threat level?
Well, again, what's the situation? Is it a prison? Is it a grocery store that the clerk's going to be in a little room and he's going to have this bullet resistant door there, and he's going to make change and all that stuff through a deal tray or whatever? A lot of people are going to that. Well, odds are you're not going to. I mean, you could, I guess, but most criminals that are going to come in to rob a 7-Eleven are going to have a pistol.
Yeah.
They're not going to have a rifle.
Right. So it seems like, are we at handguns or are we at something that you're going to put to your shoulder? Is what it.
Right.
The first fork in the road.
Right.
Is what it.
That's the very first thing before you even, what level of bullet resistance are you talking about?
Yeah.
If the building, right off the bat, if the building's a prison, or a detention center or something like that, it may up the game a little bit.
Yeah. Is there anything about the 4 through 8 that would be a bad idea to have when realistically it could be a 1 through 3 threat, in the sense of, well, you know what? Better safe than sorry. Is there a reason to argue against, a 4 through 8 versus a 1 through 3 level door? Other than cost, I would think the cost.
Well, cost, weight, would be the big factors. Is the door going to have glass? Naturally, if it does, your glass, either way, it's going to be expensive. But your glass for a 4 through 8, sure enough, going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And if you look at the PDF of the D8 PDF,
right,
and you go to page 2, for instance, the bottom of page 2, and you look at like the bottom left-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, you see all that armor plate that's put in the back of that frame.
My goodness.
Yeah, so you're going to be
I believe the technical term is we're not in Kansas anymore.
That's right. Well, not only that, but, if you've got to have all that armor plate and stuff, are they wanting some kind of electric strike, or are they wanting, what do they want on this far as hardware? Because when you got all this armor plate on the door side, you just eliminated a bunch of hardware you can have.
You sure did. Yeah, that's it's good to be Rickson. Okay.
But anyway, it's you can get into some crazy stuff.
Has there been, is there anything beyond level 8? Have applications required SECO to look for something that's truly off the scales?
Well, if it is, you're probably looking at going to Habersham or, some kind of custom house at that point.
Yeah, that's what they really, truly focus on, the stuff that's odd. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for providing the documentation and giving me something to at least be prepared. And it's extremely, completely adequate. So thank you very much. we'll try to determine what the actual threat is beyond, the potentially the imagined threats, and proceed accordingly.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for the time, sir.
All right, man. See you.
Bye.
If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Architectural Builders Supply is pleased to present you with this recording.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
How can I help you?
So I've got a customer, and if you've ever been to Naples, there's sometimes the ability to just snap fingers and have exactly what comes out of someone's mouth. So the question that I have is, I've done a little bit of bullet resistance, and it's either stuff that is specification work, obviously contract-based bid work. We don't get into the applications where that stuff is coming out like that. I am called into it when it's a one-off, it is a safe room, or it's a currency exchange, for an old-time long customer of mine, that kind of application. So I need to have a conversation with a client regarding, here's what I need to determine the difference between what they say they want and what they actually need. How do we ascertain potential threat level? This is a safe room that's being proposed in a home in Naples, Florida.
Oh, man. I think you need a consultant. I'm a manufacturer. I think you need to get a consultant involved. I don't provide threat levels. That's outside of our bounds. That's a huge liability for a manufacturer, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. No, absolutely. It was more of the conversation about, well, you're saying that you need a level 6,
right,
but do you expect that to be the threat on the installation? And it just gets to a point where I thought I'd be able to use some industry logic that I don't possess to be able to say, writing down.
I'll be honest with you, Rich. I'm not that well versed. We sell bullet resistant openings and doors, and we have tested assemblies all the way up to level 10. But I know about as much on that stuff as you can read online on the UFC standards page. So,
which page is that?
Look up the UFC standards, UFC bullet resistant threat level standards. You can find that online.
Right on.
And it'll tell you what, I think a level 3 is like a 9mm handgun. Level 4 goes up to maybe a 30-06. It's a really odd way they have it set up. To me, I'm familiar with firearms, and just the way they have whoever sat down and tested that stuff and decided, hey, this is how it's going to be, had a little bit of I don't know, it's just all over the place. So I try to keep myself out of certain conversations like, what do we need, what should we use, sort of thing, and let the architects and the engineers, the design team, the consultants, the people who are experts and security consultants decide, what to request, and then we bid it from there.
Yeah, I get that.
Sense.
Yeah, it does. And I'm looking at this standard. It covers a lot bigger threats than level 10.
This is what I'm saying. I don't think
there'll be rocket-fired threat levels in where we are.
Well, do you see like level 1 is probably like a 22 handgun. I can't remember exactly what it is. But it goes up to 10 is like a shotgun blast, right? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart. Yeah, level 10 would be a 50 cal.
It should be UFC 752 is what it should be. And that's what you have. Let's see, designed to resist. And what I was saying earlier is it's so bizarre that it jumps from, like a level 1's a 9mm pistol, number 2's a 357, number 3's a 44, and then it jumps up to a 30-06, and then an AR-15, and then it's just kind of all over the place, if you ask me. And then up to level 8 is the AR-10 assault rifle. And then you can see the different shot parameters. So the level 1 9mm pistol, that'll handle 3 shots on a, the handguns will handle 3 shots on a, what they call a testing piece, that whatever size the testing piece is. And then you've got like a center fire. Then when it moves to the high-powered rifles, it's 1 shot. So the big one that people, level 7 is what's supposed to protect from these the high-powered rifles that they're using these days.
Yeah, I see that.
Six.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hope that this gives you a little bit of help. I mean, I'd be happy to get a bid for you. Unfortunately, I just can't tell you which way to go.
Yeah, no, it's been very helpful. I was in the commercial hollow metal and architectural wood door world that I live in. I'm not aware of a UFC 752, so pointing out the standard is extremely helpful because we obviously deal in standards as well.
Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, it's probably like ANSI in the sense that the standard itself isn't available at no charge.
Right.
And I'll root around, but I'm also not trying to write an academic paper on bullet resistance levels, so it's just it's a pedantic. It's more of just mental exercise. Awesome.
Sure.
Well, thanks for calling me. I appreciate it. I really do. You get down this way, next coffee's on me. Okay, sir?
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.
If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. So what we just heard were two experts in the industry representing manufacturers, and as you can see by the first conversation, it literally boils down to what is your threat level. So the gentleman I was speaking to is referring to D7 and D8, a couple of tech sheets that are available from SECO or ASA Abloy. This is SECO, and they're literally giving you on D7 levels 1 through 3. This, I would imagine, is going to be the more typical material that they're finding is being called for. 1 3/4 armor shield polystyrene foam core. So you can do an optional honeycomb or an optional steel stiffened UL listed bullet resistant door and frame system. Okay, so what they're giving us here is I don't see a reference to gauge of the door at all, which I'm only looking for out of curiosity. Level 1, 2, 3. Hardware locations. This is all reasonably boilerplate, except they're adding for in-swing and out-swing definition. Let's try this. I want to pull up the price list because I want to see if there's any reference to different gauges. Yeah, interesting. Level 1 through 3, armor shield, bullet resistant door. So it's all quoted, but the bottom line is they're not telling you what gauge it is. Nor are they giving you an option to alter that in any way. You don't know if it's, I'm going to have to assume polystyrene foam is not your garden variety polystyrene. And you may want honeycomb for a particular purpose. I can't imagine why you might. So a bit of a mystery there, I suppose, in terms of why the different cores. It would be really nice to, however, know what gauge of steel it is, only from the perspective of being able to determine the weight. Because you want to know how you're hanging this material. I mean, they've got butts listed. But how heavy is this thing? Levels 4 through 8 in the price list again. No reference to gauge. Proprietary core. Okay, so one question I would have if I was detailing this job when I got to the hanging devices in my list of hardware, my sequence and format, I would be needing to know, how am I hanging this door? Okay, never mind. It's clearly listed.
Right on. All right, let's back up. I saw it there, and I'm going to show it to you. So they're showing 4.5 or 5-inch heavyweight full mortise hinges. Okay. Anchors. Well, I kept scrolling down. I didn't think to go to the last page. They're telling us it's 12 gauge, and that's a reference to the door thickness. I would not be attempting hanging a 12 gauge door on hinges. I just wouldn't. That would be pivots. Now, obviously, they've tested it, but I'd be using pivots. Continuous hinge you can do, but I don't see an option to change the hanging device to anything other than a continuous hinge. So it's possible that they won't do pivots from the perspective that it's not tested that way, but I would want pivots. If I couldn't have that, I would use a continuous hinge, and lastly it would be butt hinges. Okay, so back to D7. They call out 12 gauge, so that's pretty thick. Okay, so that's the gauge of the steel. Door and frame are 12 gauge. I've done 12 gauge frames. I've never done a 12 gauge door. I can't imagine how heavy that would be. That would be way heavier than heavyweight 5-inch butt hinges, in my opinion. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's look at D8. Now that I know where they put the gauge of steel. D8 is levels 4 through 8. Again, referencing our chart. Different levels of bullet resistance. Data showing the construction. Not super interested in that, except you can see this reference to 6 and all this ballistic material in the throat of the frame. This is exactly what the client was doing in Texas. He bought all that ballistic material and he was attaching it himself to the inside of the jam that I supplied. Literally like this. This is exactly what it looked like. He seemed to possess a very strong working knowledge of how to go about doing it, how to attach it. Now, door sheets, 14 gauge, doors and frames. So at this point, they're not relying on steel alone to stop the penetration. They're relying on proprietary core material, ballistic core material, armor, they're calling it, in the core, in the frame. So D7, I don't recall having seen that. Yeah, you know, it's a 12 gauge frame, and apparently 12 gauge steel is adequate to stop levels 1 through 3. That's it. Makes sense to me. I would think a 44 Magnum would give it a test, though. Bullet type is defined here. Okay. Now let's go back to the additional documents that I had pulled up in the industry, because there were some references. There was a secondary reference I want to show you as well.
If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it.
Now, the gentleman in the second phone call mentioned this UFC design to resist direct fire weapons effects, and I won't pretend to know much of what the gentleman was referring to, except that it seemed to me that he didn't feel that the standard was straightforward. There are references in this UFC document to anti-tank weapons, ballistic threats. So I would think that this document, and what I searched for, was Unified Facilities Criteria, UFC, designed to resist direct fire weapons effects. And by the way, let's back up. The SECO documents, you're going to be able to find those on our SECO manufacturers page. If you click manufacturers wherever you find it in the site, and then search for SECO, it's going to be on that page. absupply.net/SECO. It'll be in here, is where it'll be. It's not there now, but it will be by the time you're seeing this video. So this UFC document, I started to look into it, realizing this is not the scope of a door distributor. Then UL 752, I tried to find a copy of that. I'm not surprised that I couldn't find one. So there's a website from tsbulletproof.com that references UL 752 and talks more at length about it. You know, I read this in a cursory fashion, and I don't necessarily know that you need to, because it does boil down to, again, what's the threat you're protecting against? And the second gentleman I spoke to just said over and over, what threat are you protecting against? And he said he's not in the business of telling you what your threat level is. They're in the business of making resistant assemblies. So this has to be determined, and how that's done is outside of the scope of the door distributor. Any SDI person, an industry expert who's aware of SDI. Bullet resistant doors, another, yeah, this was just informational for myself, except at steeldoor.org, this is their own page, they do call out bullet resistant doors. The article, this is where I had started, it's here, Door and Hardware Magazine, specifying specialty steel doors. Another article, why school architects are switching to steel doors, we touched on that. Bullet resistant assemblies, I don't think I looked at this one. Yeah, so more summary information about it. So important to read. So there's two ways to go. You can dig as deep as you feel comfortable, or you can also take the approach of just chasing down what's needed based on threat level. And if that's the case, this definition shows you some documents, shows you the chart of what's being protected against in terms of the tool or the firearm that's defining the level. And after that, I don't know that there's a lot of research, a tremendous amount of additional resource that can be done, because the second person I spoke to was an absolute, all they do is bullet resistant assemblies, unlike Seco that makes a full range of hollow metal assemblies, and they happen to do bullet resistant under specialty. So obviously read more about it if you can, but I don't know that other than D7 and D8 from Seco, there's much more digging to be done there. Let's move on to the next definition, and that is going to be butt joint. Oh, that's easy. Let's talk about butt joint.
Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.